And we are live with today's pre-show of today's 220-1101 Core 1 A+ study group. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We got about 10 minutes before we get started. I'm just making sure everything here is working as it's supposed to be working. So far, so good. We're in pretty good shape here. Let's see if we can, kind of hard to see that angle. That's a little better. All of these things in front of me sort of get moved around a bit. Very few of these things are where they normally are. I wouldn't say very few, but I do change where the screens are. They're all on arms, so they get moved around a lot during the week. So now I'm just doing the final checks. We are recording down here. This looks good. Everything looks good on the internet side. I've changed my I got a new mic stand here, a new way to move this mic around. And it helps me greatly see now what's up here on the screen. So could not be happier with how that turned out. Well, we'll see. After this, I'll tell you if I'm happy with it. All right. Now we just need to kind of get everything ready to go. Do I have? Yes, I do. Everything is ready to go. Everything is working. Hello, chat room. Got folks checking in, seeing who's here. Thanks for being here. Good to see everyone. It's a busy day because it is the new, or I guess the kickoff day, really the first day you're able to take the new Security Plus today. So a lot of people, I think, are finally understanding that there's going to be a 6-month overlap here, 7-month, I guess, since we're here at the beginning of November. All right, we can close that window. That looks good. This looks really good. So all new questions today. We'll get started at the top of the hour. I have all new questions in the first hour from the A+ exam objectives. And in the second hour, I answer your questions. And the Q&A that you see if you are in the Vevox app right now are there to give you an idea. In fact, I should probably put that up, shouldn't I? I should probably put that on my screen. You can't see it unless I see it. There you go. And kind of put my head in there. There we go. So this is what I am talking about, the Vevox front end. We will be answering questions on the Vevox side. Let's pause that a bit. And there's your Vevox info for today. It's vevox.app. And you can see the ID of 120-214-247. There's folks checking in from Greenville, South Carolina, and South Africa, and Nigeria, and New York City. We got Mexico is here. Thanks for joining us from Canada. A lot happening. A lot going on. All right. Audio looks good. Video switcher, all the video inputs are good. I think we're in pretty good shape. We're going to keep going through that. DC is here. Ireland is checking in. We're finding a place to be. We got a few minutes before we get started. Top of the hour is, it's 11:53 my local time. So top of the hour is when we get started. Folks checking in from Germany and California. And Germany again. Lots of folks from Germany checking in. There's Utah, Ogden, Utah specifically. Hey, we got some Floridians. The Florida contingent is checking in. Thanks for being here. It's kind of nice today, isn't it? It's great in Florida today. What is it right now? It's 76 degrees outside right now, the high of 80 degrees. And that's in the cold part of Florida. So we'll have to see how things go in the central and southern parts, but it's generally pretty nice right now. So, of course, I'm leaving that to go somewhere cold next week, I think. We'll see if that actually happens. I think I'll probably just figure it out from here. All right. This looks pretty good. I'm looking at my new mic. Boom. And it's working out pretty well. So we're going to try this out today. I can't tell if it's too close or too far away. This is I had a very badly engineered mic boom earlier. Who engineered this bad mic boom? That would be me. I created a bad engineering job on the last one. So that's how we work through it. Yes, I'm in Florida as well. This is all broadcast out of Florida. I'm not leaving. You can't make me. Not going anywhere. Because it's warm right now. That's why. That's for no other reason. There's lots of reasons, but that's a good one right now. There's no reason to do that. Thanks for being here in Gastonia, North Carolina. Texas is checking in. Denmark is hello. Welcome. We got folks in Illinois. We got a lot going on here. Oh, 5-minute warning. There it is. Always pops up. 5 minutes until we get started. That's kind of how it goes. It's one of those things where me and Mrs. Professor Messer will sit around and say, if you could live anywhere, in any state, in any city, where would you live? And we always think about places up north, and then we think about winter, and we bring that bar much further down. So it's just, if it gets cold, I can't live there. It's not possible. I can't function and do those things. Other humans are able to do it. I don't know how they do it. They use some type of magic, or I don't know, something related to rock salt. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know what's going on up there. I sound so worldly, don't I? It's something to do with salt. I don't get it. We don't know here. We use salt here to go in our bowl of peanuts. That's what we do. You stop feeling it eventually. Well, I guess there is that. It's the numbness sets in. The absolute coldness sets in. That's a good point. And well played. All right. That looks all right. I think we'll probably bring some of this stuff around. Yeah, 71 degrees. We might as well be wrapping the pipes here in Florida, right? Now, I do live in a northern part of Florida, and there are times when it does get super cold here and below the freezing point. So, and we've seen cases even in central Florida where we get below the freezing point. So it does happen. We just don't go out. We can't function. Do cars even work when it's free? So those are the questions in making that happen. I have to wonder if I'm doing that. I think Igor's is, I don't know if you're being serious or not. Somebody needs to do a fact check on this because I love it if it's true. Who says we use beet juice as a de-icer for the highways here in Toronto. So that's, if true, that's amazing. And then you could also use the beet juice. Isn't beet juice like really good for you? Aren't beets like amazingly good? Why is it the things that I have no interest in having any part of, the things that are always the best for me? If there's something like that, I don't know. This is why this is the pre-show, by the way. We get nothing functional done. Very little functional done. So the Rafi in Utah says it's 43 degrees Fahrenheit in Utah. Haven't even put on my jacket yet. What are you talking about? At that point, the Scully is on. I've got lots of layers. There's plenty. I'm freezing somewhere. Something like that. Where do you even get enough beets to put on the streets? Are there enough beets in the world? I would think beet juice would be expensive. But I guess there's a whole thing. I guess the whole de-icing with salt, there's got to be a lot of environmental negativities to that. So maybe that offsets that. And beets, that's sort of how it works. Yes, and that's sort of how Florida turns out to be this very busy time. We're going into the very busy times in Florida right now because it's so warm here and it's so cold other places. So we definitely are working along those lines. All right, we got about 1 minute and 10 seconds before we get started. I should probably think about what I am doing. I think we're in pretty good shape. I've not gone through my checklist because why would I do that? But I think we're in pretty good shape. In fact, we should probably just get that ready. That looks good. This we could probably get ready with Keynote. And we need a green light. Green light, that looks good. Play button, that looks good. All that's left to do is wait for the clock to tick down at this point. Except now I don't have, this problem I keep mentioning is I don't have a clock. That's kind of how it works. Okay. I know. Presenter's curse. Presenter's curse is sort of what I carry around with me all the time. I just figured that's just normal for me in this world. So let's have a look at the clock. Okay, good. Yeah, now we're in fine shape. I need to get a much better clock. Do I have my nightstand on here? I can just load it up on there. I probably don't. It's probably just an iPad app, not a mobile app. We'll work on that eventually anyway, but now it says 12. So we're going with 12, everybody. It's time to get things started. Let's see if we can do a study group. Let's get this underway. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 2023 Professor Messer 220-1101 A+ study group. This is also called our Core 1 study group because that 220-1101 exam is currently what CompTIA refers to as the Core 1 exam. Thanks for joining us. I'm James Messer. I'll be your host through this first hour of Q&A, and you're stuck with me in the second hour as well. I'll take questions directly from you. But in this first hour, I'm going to ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And we'll get to see really how well you do with that. We'd like to see how well you know these topics. We're going to find out in a moment. In the meantime, you may want to connect to our Vevox front end. This is how we answer those questions online. We're all going to be in this live Q&A through the internet. The way you would do that is visit vevox.com, and I'll give you the IDs in just a moment. There's also a URL you can browse to. You can pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. Now, if you do those things, you can use either the app or that browser front end, and you can answer this question about where you're joining from. The ID that we are using today for Vevox is 120-214-247. That number again, 120-214-247. And that will get you to the Vevox front end where we can start to see where people are joining us from, wherever they might be in the world. And we can start to get a breakdown of where you are. Plus, this is a great way to see if you can get into these questions and be able to answer them. So if you are in Vevox and you're able to see this, then you are able to answer a question. We call this our rewind question, which, by the way, I'm looking at on my screen, and I have everything here but the question. I'm assuming we need the actual question part, right? If we really want to be impressive with these things, we need the actual question part. So this is me sort of in real time modifying everything that I'm doing in my presentation just so I can get this question asked. And if you are in Vevox and you're able to see the question, I should probably put that question on here. It's a question from last month, which means it's a question that perhaps you remember. Now, if you weren't here last month, this is something new for you. Our standing rule with these questions, though, is that please don't answer the question on the chat room. Please don't answer the question or give any hints to the question in the chat room. Instead, we want to go to the link that is on your screen. This is the Vevox app, and you can see that is if you join at vevox.app, the ID is right there. As I mentioned again, 120-214-247. The question you're looking for here is, a technician is reading a diagnostics report regarding IOPS. Which of the following is the technician troubleshooting? Are they troubleshooting video resolution, storage drive performance, wireless signal strength, LCD brightness, or network throughput? It's got to be one of those, right? So that's where you would lock in your question, is at vevox.app. You see the ID number is there on your screen, and we will come back to this question in just a moment. See how well you do. Well, thanks for joining us. We do one of these A+ study groups every month, and we actually do two A+ study groups every month, one for Core 1 and one for Core 2. We do a Network Plus study group. We do a Security Plus study group, and the video for all of those is on our YouTube channel. You can, of course, subscribe to our channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. I think I've uploaded about 30 videos in the last week, so it's a little busy right now with videos that are added. Now, I do them in groups, so you're not getting 30 separate notifications throughout the day. You just get one notification a day, and I put a big bunch of them there at the same time. So there's always something going on the YouTube channel. Make sure you check in there at professormesser.com/YouTube. Don't forget that we do have a daily A+ pop quiz question. You can, of course, see that question on the site formerly known as Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. We also have the same question on the site that is currently known as Instagram. So go to professormesser.com/Instagram, and you can see that question there. Also let you know that sometime in this first hour, I will give you instructions on how you can earn a continuing education unit credit, a CEU, as they call it. That CEU, extremely useful if you're going to be renewing your certification. If you're not renewing your certification, it really doesn't make any sense that you would want to earn a CEU. There's no reason for you to earn a CEU at that point. But there is a lot that we can go through and talk about with CEUs. If you have questions about the renewal process, feel free to ask them in the Vevox app. There's that little tab across the top where you can put in your questions now, and I'll be glad to answer those for you. And we can talk more about that in the after show. Today, we're going to talk about topics associated with the 220-1101 exam. This is the current version of the Core 1 exam. To earn your A+ certification, you have to pass both the 220-1101 test and the 220-1102 test. Those two exams were released on April the 20th of 2022, and the retirement that we estimate for this exam series is somewhere around October of 2025. So if you are currently working on your 220-1101 or 1102, you're in the right place. You're studying exactly what you should be studying. This isn't going away for quite some time. These are the versions of the exam that you should be studying. So check your study materials. Make sure they match those numbers. If they don't match those numbers, throw out those study materials. You want to not use those. Do not want to use anything that is from a different version of the exam. It will not go well if you do that. These exams are updated every 3 years or so, and that makes things a little different. If you're going in and trying to determine what should I be studying, make sure you're studying the right things. This exam is a 90-minute exam for both of those. The one we're going to focus on today is the 220-1101, and on a scale from 100 to 900, you need to score a 675. CompTIA calculates this for you automatically. There's no rhyme or reason to it because all of that grading is kept private behind the scenes. And only thing we really know is that each question is worth a different number of points. That's pretty much where our knowledge ends. But once you pass both of those exams, you are now certified for 3 years to be A+ certified, and there are ways that you can renew that certification through the years. And again, we can talk about that later if you'd like. The 1101 exam has these topics associated with it. They are mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. So this is where we want to focus our efforts today. All of the questions that we will cover today come from those specific categories, or what CompTIA tends to call domains. We also have this live stream that you're watching, and we will have a replay of this available on YouTube immediately afterwards. I also create an audio-only podcast version of our study groups. So if you like to be in your car or you're traveling, you're at the gym, you want to listen in to learn a little bit more about the topics you need to know for your exam, you can go to professormesser.com/podcast, and you can very easily subscribe to our podcast there. You can also look through your favorite podcast index on Apple Podcasts and other podcasting areas. And of course, streaming media sources like Spotify, we're on there as well. Just search for Professor Messer on Spotify, and you can bring up all of our live streams there as well. Also mention that there will be, if you wait about a day, you will go to your YouTube video description and notice that everything has timestamps. And the reason those timestamps are there is that my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this on the replay, hi, Lori, she's going through this entire thing and putting in accurate timestamps for you. There's this new thing that you've probably seen where YouTube's trying to do this automatically. I've also seen a lot of AI systems try to do this automatically. They get them completely wrong. So what we need is that human touch to be able to give you information that is complete, that is accurate, and something that is usable. And that's those are the three things, the three problems I currently have with all of those automated systems. Is anything that's automatic tends to be something that is less quality and less accurate. So it takes a lot of work to make something really accurate and quality from something that is automatic. And currently, we don't have that. So Lori is the one that goes through and does all of this. You can go back years and find all of this. Great resource. Make sure you take advantage of all of that. Also let you know that we have in once we're done here on our live stream, we're always over on our Discord server. You might want to join us there, professormesser.com/Discord. It is a chat/ multi-user studying system that we have created there on our Discord server. Feel free to join that. There's a lot of people there studying for their A+ and their Network Plus, Security Plus, and even a lot of us that like to hang out who are not necessarily studying for certification, but we're absolutely willing to help you with the studies that you are doing. It's a really great group of folks there. It's a fantastic community and doesn't cost a thing. You can join us at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you're going to need to take your exam, and this exam, you could pay full price by going to the CompTIA website, but why would you do that? If you're in the U.S. or Canada or U.S. territory, you can get a voucher from my site that you can use to pay for your exam, except my voucher is less money than paying on the CompTIA website. So you save some money. Not only do you save money by going to professormesser.com/vouchers, I give you even more information. I've written a book specifically about the studying and exam taking process called my Exam Hacks ebook. So if you're looking at some tips, tricks, or things that I have accumulated as my own tips and tricks throughout the years, I've documented all of that in this book. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers for more of those. Let's go back to that question we asked earlier, which was, a technician is reading a diagnostics report regarding IOPS. Which of the following is the technician troubleshooting? Are they troubleshooting video resolution, storage drive performance, wireless signal strength, LCD display brightness, or network throughput? And you answered storage drive performance was 61% of the vote. 23% of the vote is network throughput. 7% of you chose wireless signal strength. 5% chose video resolution. And 2% chose LCD display brightness. IOPS was the real key here. It's important to know sometimes what these different abbreviations are referring to. And when you are trying to determine performance, especially performance of hardware, it's useful to have a series of tests and some type of quantitative analysis. This quantitative analysis on reading and writing to a storage drive is the important one we were interested in, because storage drives and storage systems can have inherent delays. Sometimes these delays are associated with spinning platters that are on a traditional hard drive. Sometimes it's related to the type of interface we use to interact with information on an SSD. But the way that we measure this is through a measurement called IOPS. It stands for Input Output Operations per Second. So this is a way that we can measure one device, measure another device, and now we have a common set of numbers that we can use to examine how well they did. If you'd like an idea of the expected IOPS for certain devices, a hard drive, for example, can give you about 200 IOPS, and a common SSD that you might use is 1 million IOPS. You ever notice that if you've ever replaced a hard drive in someone's system with a brand new SSD, suddenly the system is running so much faster? It's probably very much related to that difference between the IOPS of a hard drive versus that SSD. So those of you that answered storage drive performance as the answer, you got that one absolutely right. IOPS does not generally provide you with any feedback on the resolution of your video. It's not going to tell you anything about the wireless signal strength, doesn't describe display brightness, which is commonly measured in nits. And network throughput is something that is usually measured as a bits or bytes per second, so that would not be IOPS either. Wireless signal strength we measure in dB, and video resolution is a number that is simply a static number. So 1080 by 768, for example, is a video resolution. So there's one of the things we do. The answer here is the one that 61% of you chose, which is storage drive performance, which means you got that one absolutely right. Well done. So hopefully that's given you an idea of how our Vevox front end and how we're able to answer some of these questions on the front end. Currently, we're using Vevox. Some of you have mentioned other sources to me. We might even try a different one after the beginning of the year just to keep you on your toes. We'll see how that goes. Now let's do some new questions. I have for you, before we get into another multiple choice-based question, I have for you a performance-based question. As some of you are aware, maybe some of you are not, on your exam, the first handful of questions you get on the exam are not multiple choice-based questions. So if you look at that question we just did, there was a question and there were multiple options to choose from. Well, at the beginning of your A+ exam, you won't get multiple choice-based questions. At least that's not the way it's currently done. They give you a handful of anything that is not multiple choice. It could be a fill in the blank. They could put you to a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. They might be performing a matching question or a drop-down question or putting things in a particular order. A lot of different ways to do this. So I have for you, as I do with the first new question of every study group, I have for you a performance-based question. The performance-based question I have for you today asks, select the correct frequencies. Some standards will use 2 frequencies. So I have for you on the screen all of the 802.11 standards that you need to know for this exam. And I'd like for each one of those standards, 802.11a, 802.11b, G, N, AC, and AX, I want you to tell me what frequencies are used by those standards. Is it 2.4 gigahertz? Is it 5 gigahertz? Or is it both of those, which it certainly could be. So have a look through all of those. If you think you know the answer, I need you to answer that question by joining us on vevox.app, the one you were just on, or you can use the link that's on the bottom of your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to answer this question. Have to see how we do. This particular question is only part of the equation, of course. There are other characteristics associated with these wireless standards. The only characteristic I'm really interested right now is the one that is dealing specifically with frequencies for the 802.11 standards. So let's see how you do with putting in those answers. I see a number of you are already starting to input what you believe the answer might be for all of these. This would be a very common question to get on something like an exam. In fact, I could see adding on additional characteristics of these particular standards and having you fill out or drag and drop what those characteristics are among all of these. Obviously, with the online system that we're using, there is no drag and drop. We can't really do it that way. So you can imagine, if you will, how a performance-based question for drag and drop might have a 2.4 and a 5 on the screen, and you would drag it and drop it into the right particular standard for 802.11a, B, G, N, AC, and AX. So those are all of the standards you need to know for your A+ exam. These are significant problems to go through, things you need to know. There will be times when you will be in a warehouse and the warehouse is complaining about low throughput or bad connectivity. You're going to perform a series of tests. You'll do maybe check the frequencies that are in use in your area, and you may find that other things in your area are creating conflicts, so you might have to change to a different set of frequencies. But when you do that, you may have to change the standard of wireless networks that you're using. That's what this question is about. Which standard do you choose based on the frequencies that are available to you in any particular place? So hopefully that's given you a little bit of input on things that you can answer. Let's see how you did with this one. We're going to step through each one of these one at a time, and we'll see how you do. We'll start with 802.11a. The very first standard that we created in wireless networking was the A standard. You can tell because it has the A at the beginning. And 802.11a only uses 5 gigahertz as frequencies. 802.11a did not use 2.4 gigahertz. At pretty much the same time as A, we released 802.11b. Although they are labeled A and B, they effectively came out at the same time. 802.11b supported 2.4 gigahertz frequencies. That's what the standard consists of. And so as we began this foray into standardized wireless networking, we had two different frequency ranges to choose from. And in fact, at that time, we tended to use 802.11a in very big areas. Things like warehouses would use 802.11a, and everything else that we would have used 802.11b. Well, because B was so popular, it turned out that that's what we pretty much would use everywhere, because the cards, the adapter cards and wireless network interfaces that we had were all specific to one of these standards. And so it was pretty interesting the way that worked out. Soon after, we came up with a new standard, 802.11g. This was an upgrade to 802.11b, and along those same lines, it also uses 2.4 gigahertz. So this is sort of the newer version of B, was the G standard. All of these are relatively old at this point because we've introduced newer standards since then. For example, the 802.11n was designed to be more of a standard where we could bring together everybody who was on 802.11a and everybody else who was running 802.11b and G, and bring them all back to one central standard that supported both 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. So that IEEE standard that you can go out and download right now and look through supports both of those different frequency ranges for the 802.11n standard. The next one on our list is 802.11ac, and 802.11ac is a 5 gigahertz technology only. Now, there are times when you will find these 802.11 standards or 802.11 wireless access points at a local store, and you'll notice that it says on the box 802.11ac, but it also says that it communicates over 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz. Well, this is the pretty sneaky part of this. Everything that's running on those devices that say 802.11ac and it's running at 5 gigahertz really is the 802.11ac standard. If you start to see any 2.4 gigahertz on your 802.11ac access point, it's actually using the 802.11n standard. So a little bit different, a little bit maybe misleading in working with that, but that's the way it's marketed in any case. And lastly, the 802.11ax standard is one that supports both 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. We brought it all back together again, and that standard is probably one of the most common modern standards as we are here in November of 2023. So there are the answers. 802.11a supports 5 gigahertz. The B standard operates over 2.4 gigahertz. The G standard also operates over 2.4 gigahertz. 802.11n supports both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz frequency ranges. We have 802.11ac that supports 5 gigahertz only, and then we're back to both of those frequency ranges. 2.4 and 5 are supported in 802.11ax. That is our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that's given you an idea of things you should know. If you're not familiar with any of these frequencies or any of the other things that you need to know about these wireless networks, you can find out more about them on my video in section 2.3. The video name is Wireless Network Standards. That would be the easy way to make that happen. So hopefully that's given you some perspective over some of the frequencies that you need to know for your exam. These are in the A+ Core 1 exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with those objectives. We'll talk more about the objectives later, but certainly this is an important part of the things that you are working towards, and you need to know all of these details about wireless networks. Now that we finished your performance-based question of the month, let's shift gears back to our multiple choice-based questions. This multiple choice-based question asks, when starting a VM, the hypervisor shows an error stating the CPU is not configured to support virtualization. Which of the following should be enabled? Is it parity, RAID, caching, AMDV, or UEFI security? And if you think you know the answer, you can see on the screen all of the different things that you can select for that. One is professormesser.com/QA, or you can join Vevox.app directly using the information on your screen. So again, when starting a VM, the hypervisor shows an error stating the CPU is not configured to support virtualization. Which of the following should be enabled? Is it parity, RAID, caching, AMDV, or UEFI security? If you think you know the answer, lock that in. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will instead see how well you know this one. Whenever I see the numbers go up so quickly, I wonder, is it a gimme or are we all answering the wrong thing? Or sometimes we just get just an even distribution across all of them. Yeah, crazy things happen here. We're working on these. So maybe you've run into this as well, where you're trying to get a hypervisor running on your system and knowing exactly the things that you should configure to make that happen. So maybe this is something you know already. So let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, when starting a VM, the hypervisor shows an error stating the CPU is not configured to support virtualization. Which of the following should be enabled? Is it parity, RAID, caching, AMDV, or UEFI security? Let's see how you did. The answer to this one, by far, about 70% of you have chosen AMDV. But we also have in double digits about 17% that say that's UEFI security. So we've got a number of arguments there to be made. Single digits, we have parity at 6%, caching at 3%, and RAID at 3%. So that's the situation we run into, is really have two that are vying for the top space. Is it AMDV or UEFI security? Well, processors are an important part of virtualization because our modern processors can perform a great deal of management in the processor itself when it comes to these virtual systems and hypervisors that you're running over these systems. And if you are using a modern CPU, you will need to turn on those capabilities in your BIOS. If you're using an Intel BIOS, the configuration that you want to enable is called virtualization technology. It's kind of obvious when you look at the name. In the AMD world, if you're running an AMD CPU, you'll see the option to enable AMDV. The V in this case obviously stands for virtualization. So there is the configuration we need to set for the CPU. These are configurations that are commonly configured in your BIOS. So you would go into the UEFI BIOS configuration utility when you boot your machine, and you would tell the UEFI BIOS, under the processor settings, please turn on or enable virtualization technology, or please enable AMDV, and it will enable those options for you. And once you enable those, your hypervisor will use that hardware and be able to properly virtualize on your system. So if you're starting a VM and the hypervisor is showing that error, stating the CPU is not configured to support virtualization, then you need to enable AMDV. That is the right answer. That's what we were looking for. So if you are virtualization and you run virtualization on your computer and you're getting some of those odd errors, you may want to look at your BIOS configuration and see what options are there. Good job on that one. About 70% got that one right, which is a great number for getting these questions right. You know your virtualization information pretty cold. Let's do another one. I've got one here. This next question asks, an interface on an Ethernet switch is alternating between an active and inactive state. Which of the following would describe this symptom? Is that switch loop, port flapping, CRC error, jumbo frames, or duplex mismatch? See if you know what this one is. An interface on an Ethernet switch is alternating between an active and inactive state. Which of the following would describe this symptom? Is it a switch loop, port flapping, CRC error, jumbo frames, or duplex mismatch? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer, or use the information on the screen for Vevox, where you have an ID of 120214247. And that will get you the information that you would like to find. There's so many different troubleshooting steps you have to know on the A+ exam. Troubleshooting for the computer that you're using, troubleshooting of the hardware, troubleshooting of the network. It's all in there. On that Core 1 exam, we have to know all of these different scenarios for troubleshooting at the network level, very commonly from a desktop perspective. So this is one where if you suddenly get these errors, you need to understand what you're seeing and be able to tell others, here's the problem that I think we're having in this particular case. So if somebody came up and said to you, we're having a problem with the Ethernet switch alternating between an active and inactive state, they could very easily abbreviate that by saying, our problem is, and then we choose the answer that you're hopefully already decided upon. Let's see if you got this one right. The question again asks, an interface on an Ethernet switch is alternating between an active and inactive state. Which the following would describe this symptom? Is it switch loop, port flapping, CRC error, jumbo frames, or duplex mismatch? And let's see how you answered this one. 61% say port flapping, 16% say switch loop, 14% say duplex mismatch. So we've got 3 good answers as a possibility, one that's far in front of everyone else with the port flapping. And then we have single digits. 7% of you said CRC error, and then only about 1% said jumbo frames. Whenever you get into a situation where a switch interface is constantly, it's going up, it's going down, it's going up, it's going down. These are problems that you will ultimately run into in the world of network management. You're probably running into something we refer to as a port flapping state. The port is being enabled and then being disabled and then being re-enabled and then being disabled again. There's lots of reasons that this might happen, and very often it's the cable itself that's a problem. Maybe as you are at your desk, it's a bad cable, it's got a short, and as you move a certain way at your desk, it loses the connection. As you move back, it makes the connection again. So it could be going up and down and up, and especially if you're rocking your chair and you notice, why is this? It's down, it's up, it's down. That's pretty interesting. Look, it went down again. Now it's back up again. And went down again. Now it's back up. I wonder what's doing that. I wonder what's causing that problem. That's technically port flapping. It could also be related to the software in the switch. It could be related to the interface card on your computer. It could be related to a bug that is in your operating system. So you may want to try swapping cables, because that tends to be very easy. You replace a patch cable here, you replace a patch cable there. Did it solve the problem? Then it was the cable. Or you may want to use the universal fix. Turn off your computer and turn it back on again. Did that fix the problem? So there are a number of different ways to go through troubleshooting this specific network issue, but it is an issue that you will occasionally run into, and it's important that you're able to tell someone, I'm trying to troubleshoot an issue of port flapping, and they'll know immediately what port flapping is referring to. Now, we have other options here that we did not choose. For example, 16% of you said a switch loop. A switch loop would create data that would go around the network and just keep going around the network in one big loop. Layer 2 switch loops are generally completely debilitating to a network. They will bring the network to its knees, not because interfaces are going up and down, but because so much traffic gets onto the network and begins looping around over and over. And as it's looping around, you're adding more network traffic, which is looping around even more, and even more traffic is coming after that, and eventually you overwhelm the switches due to this loop. So switch loops are, of course, something that we can prevent with... No, we don't know. We don't know what switches. We'll get somebody in the chat room. I'm like 7 seconds behind to get that. So anybody who's doing spanning tree protocol is able to prevent the switch loop from occurring. This question was not about spanning tree protocol. It was about interfaces going up and down. And generally, the switch loop doesn't bring down interfaces. If anything, it keeps everything up, and then eventually everything fails on the network, or it just becomes so congested that it doesn't work. And then we got duplex mismatch. About 14% of you chose that one. A duplex mismatch is when you configure one side for half duplex and the other side is configured for full duplex. Those are not going to be able to communicate very efficiently. You will have a great deal of problems getting full network traffic throughput over those connections, but they don't turn a device off. They don't disable the interface and re-enable it, so it would not match the symptoms that we're seeing in this particular question. A CRC error, cyclic redundancy check, is one that is generally associated with an Ethernet frame. There are other types of frames that use CRCs to be able to identify corrupted data, and they're usually specifically there to determine, did this frame get across the network without some type of corruption? CRC errors are important to monitor so you can see how well the traffic is being sent back and forth, but it does not disable or re-enable an interface. And lastly, a jumbo frame, which is great to use on an Ethernet network, especially if you're transferring a large amount of data constantly. Jumbo frames are great, but jumbo frames do not enable or disable interfaces on a switch. The one we were looking for is indeed port flapping. 61% got that one absolutely right. That is the right answer. Really didn't fool very many people on that one. You were spot on with troubleshooting your Ethernet network configuration. Well, as you can already tell, we've gone through a number of different topics on these questions, and there's many more that are contained within your CompTIA exam objectives. These topics cover everything from operating systems to troubleshooting hardware. There is a mix of everything that it seems that we're going to run into with these. So what I did was go through the 137 videos that make up my Core 1 and Core 2 A+ courses, and I took all 19 hours of that information and collapsed it all into 2 books, one for Core 1 and Core 2. They are called my course notes. These are defined or specifically there so that you can get everything in one place. So that once you've watched the videos, you've gone through your books, you've looked at the information and gone through labs, and you've done some Q&A, you can finally get a set of notes that's high quality. It represents exactly what was in my training course, and it puts everything in one place. Maybe you don't have time to go through all 137 videos, but you wish you had all of that information in one single document. This is for you. These are my course notes. You can find out more about them at professormesser.com/1101 notes, or simply follow the pull-down menus at the top of my site and choose the A+ course notes for Core 1, Core 2, or you can get both of those. And when you get both of those, you get a slight discount, which is kind of nice. Being able to get discounts on these are good. So those are on my website. Go to professormesser.com/1101 notes. Hopefully that can give you some information that can help you with your exam as well. Let's do some more. We've got another question for you. This next question asks, a company requires all mobile phones to automatically lock after a period of non-use. Which of the following would be the best way to apply this policy? Would it be STP, custom SIMs, group policy, Bluetooth pairing, or MDM? A company requires all mobile phones to automatically lock after a period of non-use. Which of the following would be the best way to apply this policy? Would we apply it using STP, custom SIMs, group policy, Bluetooth pairing, or MDM? If you think you know the answer, please do not answer in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the links on your screen. Either go to professormesser.com/QA and then go, or you could also go to our Vevox links that are on the screen as well. Hopefully that will give you an idea of things that you can work on to answer this question. Maybe you know this one. Maybe you've used this technology to be able to work through these, or maybe this is one where we're just taking a guess. You should always take a guess on your exam anyway. If you don't know the answer, don't leave it blank. Just put something down. You can always mark it to be able to do those, but that's another one of those where it's pretty important to be able to step through all of these. See what you think this one might be. A number of you, some folks in the chat room have been saying, yep, we use this technology in our organization, so it was a gimme. I do recognize some of those do tend out to be gimmies, but that's what you want. You want to be able to use these technologies, become familiar with these technologies, so when these questions come up, hopefully it will be a gimme for you. But if you don't know the answer, in a way, it's almost better right now, because we can go through all of these and learn something from it. So the next time these topics come up, you will know what the answer is, which is the point of us doing this after all. Let's see how you did with this. The question asks, a company requires all mobile phones to automatically lock after a period of non-use. Which of the following would be the best way to apply this policy? Is it through STP, custom SIMs, group policy, Bluetooth pairing, or MDM? Let's answer or see what you answered on this one. And we can see, wow, 77% of you say the answer is MDM. 20% say it's group policy, and then it all goes to pretty much nothing. 2% for STP, almost a percentage for custom SIMs, and 0% for Bluetooth pairing. Sorry, Bluetooth pairing. What happened there? Well, the answer here that 77% of you chose was MDM. MDM obviously stands for mobile device management. And this is one where you can manage all of these mobile devices from one pane of glass, one single console that you can sit at, but still be able to see all of those different devices that are used by your organization as mobile devices and allow you to manage them, which in many cases is the important part of this. This is an exceptional functionality, especially for controlling what people can do on their phones, for separating personal data from corporate data, which is obviously an important privacy concern. And all of this is enabled by using mobile device managers, or MDMs. This is where you would go to configure all of those different settings. So those of you that chose MDM, the 77% of you, you were correct. That is spot on what you would do. Now, there are other options here like group policy. Group policy, about 20% of you chose group policy. Group policy is an incredibly interesting option here. As some of you have probably seen with group policy, it is used for Microsoft Windows and to be able to set policies on a Windows device. Well, our mobile devices, or at least all phones that might be used as mobile devices in our organization, are probably not running Windows. I mean, they could be if you're using really old versions of that Windows Mobile that used to be around. These days, pretty much all your mobile devices are going to be either an iOS or iPad OS device from Apple, or it would be an Android device from other types of companies. And to be able to manage all of those, even through different operating systems, an MDM is the right choice. Group policy is used exclusively for Windows-based systems. STP in this particular case stands for Spanning Tree Protocol. We just talked about how Spanning Tree can be used to prevent loops on our network. Obviously, STP has other abbreviations, a shielded twisted pair, for example. Neither of those make any sense. So whichever one you chose as the abbreviation, as the acronym spell out for that one, neither one of them applied. So that would not be the right answer. A custom SIM is the ability to have a separate SIM on every device, or in many cases, a software-based SIM, but we don't put our policies on the SIMs. We put our policies on the phones themselves. So a custom SIM isn't going to help you either. We also have Bluetooth pairing. Nobody chose that option, but obviously if you're connecting to a Bluetooth device, you have to go through the pairing process. That doesn't help you manage the process of locking a device after a period of non-use. The only option here that makes any sense is the one you answered, which is the MDM. You guys were spot on with that one, making all of this work. Well, I want to throw you a curveball. I want it to be a little bit harder. So let's do a hard question this time, or what I think might be a hard question. You'll tell me if it's hard or not. We're about to find out. The next question on our list as we work through these, this question asks, a network administrator is adding an SPF record to a DNS server. Which of the following would be provided with this configuration? Would it be version of the DNS config, a list of authorized mail servers, IPv6 address of an FQDN, digitally signed email messages, or instructions on handling unauthorized emails? All of these are, in many cases, real things. A network administrator is adding an SPF record to a DNS server. Which of the following would be provided with this configuration? A version of the DNS config, a list of the authorized mail servers, IPv6 address of an FQDN, digitally signed email messages, or instructions on handling unauthorized emails. If you know the answer, make sure you answer using the links on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, or you can go to the links there for Vevox to be able to answer this question. Let's see if you know your DNS records. specifically an SPF record. Almost gave you everything. Almost gave you all of the details in the question. So this one really is testing how well you know what this thing is. And that is probably a very common theme that you will find on these CompTIA exams, is they very rarely ask you what the abbreviations mean. They're almost always asking you how you would use these technologies. So although it may be important for you to spend time memorizing some of those abbreviations, I think it's probably more important that you memorize how that particular abbreviation or technology is used or implemented on a network. And this is one of those questions that is really seeing how well you know the implementation of the technology, perhaps in many ways more than the abbreviation of the technology itself. And that's pretty common on these exams. They will never ask you a question such as, what does HDMI stand for? They'll never ask you that. It will never be a question. But it might ask you, might have a question where it asks, you're using an HDMI cable and here's a problem that's occurring. What do you think the problem is related to? So you have to know what the HDMI is. You have to understand, well, that's HDMI, that's video. That's how that technology is used. So the problem that I am troubleshooting is a video problem, and then we can continue with our troubleshooting process. That's how these exams generally start out. So let's see how we do with this one. Now we've got a number of answers in. Let's see if you got this one right. The question asks, a network administrator is adding an SPF record to a DNS server. Which of the following would be provided with this configuration? Is it version of the DNS config, a list of authorized mail servers, an IPv6 address of an FQDN, digitally signed email addresses, or instructions on handling unauthorized emails? So let's see how you did with this one. We'll have a look at the answers that you put in, and 52% say a list of authorized mail servers. And then we almost have three-way tie right after that. 15% of you say version of the DNS config. IPv6 address of an FQDN was 11%. And then 14% say instructions on handling unauthorized emails. And then lastly, we have 6% or so that say digitally signed email addresses. Well, a lot of this we're talking about here, I can see in this particular series of answers, 3 of them are about email, it seems. 2 of them are about other things related to DNS. So we might want to kind of focus in a little bit on the email part. First, let's talk about SPF and what it is working through whenever you're working on these. The SPF part stands for the Sender Policy Framework. That is what we would use. It's generally the first configurations you make when you're trying to improve the security of your email system. These SPF records are designed to let everyone know on the internet, here are the only servers that should be sending mail with my domain name. This is a way that we can kind of do a reverse lookup. If we received, let's say you received an email from me today and it was from james@professormesser.com. But did it really come from a mail server that I configured and set up to send my mail? Well, what we would do when you receive that mail, when your mail server receives that mail, it asks my DNS server, hey, give me a list of all the SPF servers. Like, give me a list of all the names of the things that should be used here. And it will list out all of the different mail servers. In fact, I have one listed here. I think I've even updated my SPF since then to add some additional servers to this list. For example, I use an email sending service at mailgun.org, and that is able to send out information from my web server. But I use other mail services as well, but they're all represented in the SPF record. That way, somebody who receives a message from me can check that SPF record, then check where this originated, because that information is in the header of the email message, and it can see, oh, I see it was sent from one of the servers that is authorized on Professor Messer's DNS server. Obviously, Professor Messer is the only one who has access to his DNS server. Therefore, I have a relatively high degree of trust that this email did originate from professormesser.com. That is how we use the SPF records that are in our DNS servers. We can combine those with other capabilities. For example, some folks were talking earlier about some other capabilities. For example, you've got a list of authorized mail servers was our SPF record. We also have digitally signed email messages, and there are ways to configure and set up a DNS record that contains your public key so that people can validate that digital signature. And instructions on handling unauthorized emails is another type of DNS record. So the digitally signed messages are the DKIM fields that you would put on a DNS server, and instructions on how you would handle anything that might come through as unauthorized is marked in your DNS server as a DMARC record. So we've got a little bit of email things going on in this question. The one we were specifically asking about was the SPF record, and that would be a list of authorized mail servers. Now, we also have here a version of the DNS config. That's your start of execution or your start record on a DNS server. The SOE contains version information so that someone can look at one of your DNS servers, be able to determine, has this been updated since the last time I checked? And there's a serial number that's on there that allows you to do that. We refer to that as the version number or the serial version number of that. We also have IPv6 address of an FQDN. That is another type of DNS record called a Quad A or an AAAA record. It is not one that is used to add an SPF record to the DNS server. The only option here that has anything to do with adding that SPF record is a list of authorized mail servers, and about 53% of you got that one absolutely correct. If you are someone who is watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would like to send you an email that validates that you were here watching this. In fact, if you're watching this on a replay, this is the only way that you're able to receive credit for watching this video. What you would do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click that Contact Us link. It brings up a form, and in that form, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put November 2023 Core 1. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, SPF. SPF is the super secret code word of the month. And then if you like to put anything else in that you would like for me to be able to read through, because I do read through every single one of these, you're welcome to add other comments there. I get hundreds of these in a month, so I apologize if I'm not sending back a reply to every single one of these, but I do read through all of them. So you got something that doesn't need a reply, put whatever you'd like in there. I like to hear about where your certification progress is going, the things you're doing with these. It gives me an idea of what we're working with. So that is what we would do. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In there, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put November 2023 Core 1. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, SPF. We've got time for some more questions, so let's do another one and working through them. Our next question on our list asks, a system administrator has added a second DIM to a system to increase throughput. Which of the following would best describe this modification? Is that parity memory, SSD, cache memory, multi-channel memory, or ECC? A system administrator has added a second DIM to a system to increase throughput. Which of the following would best describe this modification? Is that parity memory, SSD, cache memory, multi-channel memory, or ECC? This is an interesting question, not only in the technology that is dealt with in this particular question, but it's also interesting to me that this question is one that is asking for the best answer, which implies, and I think it could be in some ways explained out, that multiple answers could technically be correct, but we weren't looking for that. We're looking for the most correct, the best description of what we're doing here. So how well do you think you know these? Let's see how we work through these and what we would do with them. This is an important one when we're dealing with understanding, making changes to a system. and somebody says, I know how we can improve this. I know how we can change that. I know how we can upgrade this. I know how we can modify these particular systems. Here's what we'll do. So it's important to know when you make that modification, what are you doing? What is going on behind the scenes that makes you think that you're going to get more throughput, more storage, more capabilities, more functionality, or whatever it happens to be. So it's important in this case that you understand why someone would be doing that. So let's see how you did with those and working through them. This is one I think that if you're someone who is really working through the details, hopefully this is one where I think I'm familiar with this quite a bit, but it's not something you run into all the time. So that may be what throws a lot of people off for a question like this. But it certainly is a technology you should be aware of, and it is one that, of course, comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Let's see how well you did with this one. The question again asks, a system administrator has added a second DIMM to a system to increase throughput. Which of the following would best describe this modification? Is it parity memory, SSD, cache memory, multi-channel memory, or ECC? So I think this is one. Let's see how you answered first. And if we look at the answers we got in, 75% of you say it's multi-channel memory. There were a lot of questions in the chat room about this one, and we'll step through how we got to that particular answer in just a moment. That is the correct answer, the 75% of you that chose multi-channel memory. All the other answers are single digits. So we have parity memory at 8%. We have cache memory at 7%, SSD at 5%, and 2% for ECC. So obviously, as I've already mentioned, the answer here is indeed multi-channel memory. You'll often see this listed as dual channel or triple channel, or in some unusual cases, quad channel memory to be able to do this. And that's why I was very specific in the way the question was structured so that we can understand what we were looking for, the types of things we were trying to do. This is one where we also want to choose memory for this that all match each other. Hopefully we're using the same model type, in fact, the same manufacturer of memory even helps for something like this. And even if you look at a motherboard that supports multi-channel memory, you'll see often that the slots in the motherboard itself are colored so that if you're putting in the multiple channels of memory, that you put them into the right slots. Many times I've opened a system and one memory module is in the first slot and the second memory module is in the second slot. Well, one of those is marked as black and the other one's marked as red, which means that if you have two slots and your motherboard supports, in this case, dual channel memory, you're not getting any benefit because you haven't matched the colors on your motherboard. You might want to look at your motherboard when you're done here to see if first, does your motherboard support multi-channel memory? Do you only have a single memory module? You may be limiting yourself for throughput. It's one of those important configuration options that you might have in a system is to have your multi-channel memory configured. And when you buy a system from a third party, they aren't even thinking about that. Oh, you want 8 gig? We'll put a single 8 gig DIMM in your system. As it turns out, it would have been faster, twice as fast, if you would have put 2 4 gig SIMs or DIMMs in this case. So you've got different places where you can go to put those in. Those modules are incredibly important and where you put them. The question, let's step through so that all of you can understand why this is. A system administrator has added a second DIMM to a system to increase throughput. So already we know there's a single module in there now. We're putting a separate one additional module into the system. And by doing that, we are increasing throughput. That's it. That is the definition of a dual channel memory configuration down to the letter. That is exactly what it is. So that should have pointed you immediately to a multi-channel memory configuration. In this case, specifically dual channel, but multi-channel does describe dual channel as well. So hopefully that gives you some perspective as to how this question was posed. And we want to know what the answers were. Multi-channel was obviously the correct answer. Let's go through some of these others. 8% of you chose parity memory. Parity memory is the parity. If you're using a motherboard that supports parity memory, that parity is something that is built into the memory module itself. You don't add a separate module just so you can have parity in your memory. That is already built into the module that's configured on your system. You don't have to add a second DIMM for that to work. We also have about 8% that said cache memory. This was the only other answer that could potentially be correct, but it would be relatively unusual for someone to add a separate memory module to your system and only allocate that as cache. That would be very unusual. It can be done, and people have done crazier things on their systems, I assure you, but that is something where we would not commonly configure one single memory module to have a configuration just for cache. Doesn't make much sense to do that. You ultimately probably wouldn't see much of an improvement anyway. We have 5% that said SSD. SSD is a type of memory technology, but it's one that is specific to solid-state drives. It does not have anything to do with the memory modules that we would install on our motherboard directly, so it would not be an SSD. And then lastly, ECC. That ECC memory, very commonly associated with parity memory. They're almost the same thing, except ECC memory can correct any type of problems with the parity. ECC memory is one where adding an additional DIMM doesn't somehow increase throughput. If you're dealing with ECC, each memory module is either an ECC module or it isn't. So even a single module is able to support ECC, which is not the description of what we're seeing here. The only answer that really has anything to do with how we use memory technologies on these motherboards is multi-channel memory. In this case, we're describing a dual channel configuration, and 75% of you got that one absolutely correct. So well done with that. It's got a lot of different options there and things to work through. So hopefully you're familiar with some of these technologies and the way they work. Now, I realize we're at the top of the hour, and normally this is where we would end our first part of our study group, but I'd like to do one more question, and I have one here that comes from my practice exams book. Now, if you haven't seen my practice exams book before, this is one where I've looked around the internet at the practice exams that are out there, and I got to tell you, it's not very impressive. There's not a lot of good practice exams. You've probably seen this. There just isn't a lot of high quality practice exams out there. And a lot of the practice exams that I have seen for the latest version of our exams are referring to topics that are no longer covered in the exam objectives. Whoever wrote their book 6 years ago has simply brought all those questions over and expects you to know what the answers are, even though those topics aren't even on the exam. I don't know why they do it, but they do. But it certainly leads me to the case that there's a need for higher quality exam questions that have been specifically written for the topics you need to know for your exam. And secondly, they are questions that are written in a way that emulates the style and voice of the actual exam. And that explains why I created my practice exams book. This is an exam book with 389 pages. It has 3 separate practice exams, 90 questions in each exam, 5 performance-based questions on each of these. So there are 15 performance-based questions in this single book. So hopefully that's given you some perspective. Now I have on my screen the practice exams book, and I have a question up from the practice exams book that we should do so that you could see how someone might use this particular book. Now, this is a PDF, so it's something that you can use on practically any device. In fact, I don't know any device that doesn't read through or use PDFs. So this works in any operating system. It works on your mobile device. It works on your tablets. I don't care if you're running iOS. I don't care if you're running Android. It doesn't matter. If you can read and write and view a PDF, you can do that. Let's have a look at this question that I have here. This is question A26. It comes from page 10 of my practice exams A. And this question asks, a system administrator has tripped over an Ethernet cable and the cable's RJ45 connector is broken. Which of the following should be used to resolve this issue? Would it be punch down tool, tone generator and probe, cable tester, or crimper? Now, since we're using a PDF, it's very likely that your PDF reader has a way to annotate the information on the screen. If you got a tablet, there's usually some type of stylus that you can use to write on the screen. Or you could use your mouse and simply highlight different things that are on the screen. If you think you know what the answer is, you can mark it on the screen. So there's different ways that you can use this PDF that go beyond just a book. You can really use this to make notes and jot down important information that you might want to remember later. Also, since this is a PDF, I found other ways to make this process a little bit easier. For example, you can see we just went through that question, and on the right side, it has quick answer on page 31. We're on page 10 right now. Or we can look at the details of this answer on page 61. Well, this makes it easy if you've got the physical book. You can just flip to page 61 and you can see what the different options are for that particular question, and you can read through it in the book. But if we're here electronically, I've created a link right where it says the details. And if you click on the details, it moves to page 61 instantly. So very useful to have that there. And in fact, it gives you the question again, and I give you the answer. I tell the answer is D, crimper. And I explain why this is the correct answer. This is something you've probably seen before. Crimper is used to attach a modular connector to a cable. In this example, a new connector can be reattached to the cable using an RJ45 crimper. Now, one of the things that I get very frustrated with is that if you're going through a set of practice exams, it tends to lead you down the path of thinking you're going to get some things wrong. This is a practice. And when you get things wrong, you need to have some type of feedback that explains why you got it wrong, or the process is broken. How are you supposed to learn from that if you get it wrong? There needs to be some type of feedback loop. So in my practice exam book, every incorrect answer is documented. So if you answered C, cable tester, I explained to you why I don't think that was the right answer and why I don't think that was the right answer. So I'm giving you some justification to help understand why is the right answer right, but perhaps more importantly, why are the wrong answers wrong? And that is the one that creates that feedback loop. I will also tell you, if you have this book of mine and you're doing very well and you get a question right, take a few moments and read through the wrong answers. Because on your exam, it may not be asking about a crimper. On your exam, it might be asking about a cable tester. And if you didn't read through the justification, you may not understand exactly what the differences are between these different technologies. So that is what we have with our practice exams book. Now, if you've read through the question and none of this makes sense, some of you have sent me those questions before, like, I'm not ready to take this. I don't even understand these terms they're using. What I've done is put a link to the video in my course that contains the topic that was used to create this question. So you can watch that video, get more information on the background, on the nomenclature, on the style of what we're talking about, and then come back to be able to understand what we were really asking about. And once we're done with this question that we've looked through, this is a PDF, and in many PDF readers, there's a back button. Mine is up here right in the upper left-hand corner. I can go back in my page history, and when I click that, it takes me back to where we started on page 10. So you don't have to keep scroll, and then scroll back. I found a way that you can easily see the answer and then immediately hop back to the next question on the list. You can keep scrolling through and go to the next question that's in the book. All of this is in my practice exams book. There are both physical versions that you can see that I'm holding. The physical version is an actual book, perfect bound, like you would expect with a high-quality paperback book. We also have the PDF version, which is what you saw on the screen. That is the digital edition, so that you can download that and put it on all of the devices you happen to use. That's on my website. You can find out more at professormesser.com/core1pe. Maybe that will help you study and prepare for your exams as well. Well, we have gone through quite a number of questions today. Everything we went through today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. These objectives are first free. Is there any other reason that we would not be jumping on those right now? Of course we should download them because they're free. And you can find them very easily. You can either visit the link on my site, professormesser.com/objectives, or you can simply go to your favorite search engine and type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll take you right to the page. And from there, you can download all of these. So hopefully that's given you some places to go, because a lot of people ask me, what do I really need to know on this exam? Someone earlier was mentioning a set of topics they were running into on a set of practice exams. They were wondering, do I even need to know this? Well, my question is it in the exam objectives? If it's not specifically listed in the exam objectives, you should not be spending your time on that technology or that topic. The exam stays very, very, very close, if not 100%, to these objectives. That's how much they are. And so that's why I tell people, if you know all of the topics in the exam objectives, you're going to pass this exam. You really can't help it. Here's the exam objectives. When I tell you it has everything, every one of these bullets on all of these pages are the things you should know. It not only tells you what you need to know for the exam, it's a great checklist to see if you're ready to take the exam. This is your sanity check. This is your barometer to understand, am I ready or not? Should I be walking into that room and taking my exam, or should we push this out into the future a little bit? It's all in the exam objectives. And it's, as I mentioned, free from CompTIA. It's an amazing resource. Make sure you have your set of exam objectives, a valuable, valuable tool. We do one of these study groups every month. We do actually 2 study groups for A+, one for Network Plus and one for Security Plus. Today is the 7th of November. I can't believe it. There we are. We have another A+ study group on the 9th, so come back in 2 days for our Core 2 study group. This month, our Network Plus study group is on the 21st, and our Security Plus study group is on the 28th. We also have, in December, our schedule's very different. We have our A+ study groups on the 5th and the 7th. We have a Network Plus study group on the 13th, and on the 20th as our Security Plus study group. Now, if you're watching this and we're way past December of 2023, you can always find when the next live event is going to be by following the link at the bottom of your screen, professormesser.com/calendar. I also update and maintain all of the calendars that are in the events channel on our Discord. So whether you're on the Professor Messer website or whether you're on our Discord, you'll be able to find out when the next live event is going to be. Well, we're not done yet. I still have plenty more Q&A to go through, except now we're going to go to our after show where you ask me questions from this. We can always have this available. Make sure you also check out our discounted vouchers that are on our website at professormesser.com/vouchers. We also have our course notes and practice exams and a little bit of a bonus if you buy a discount, if you buy both of those at the same time at professormesser.com/1101success. And of course, here's a bunch of links. You can find us on social media. Simply go to the social media you like to go to, but put professormesser.com in front of it. So professormesser.com/Discord/Instagram/LinkedIn/YouTube. You get the idea. And if you liked this video, I would love it if you could give it a thumbs up. I would love it even more if you could subscribe to our channel. It's something that the YouTube folks that I work with look very, very closely at those statistics, and they don't know if anything's good unless you tell them it's good. I've told them it's good. For some reason, they're not listening to me. They need to listen to you. And the way that you can talk to them directly is hit that thumbs up button, and even better, subscribe to the channel. We would appreciate that, and we love you for it. Stick around for the after show. We got a lot more coming up, plenty more questions directly from you. Thank you for joining us in this first hour. Stick around for the after show, and thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay. Let's now shift gears. I got a little bit too much for me on the screen there. There we go. Lots there on the screen. So now things change. They don't change that much. They change enough that now I am going to have you give me questions. And the way that we would do that, let me hide all of this. And now you can see on your screen is a message that gives you information on this that says that you can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. If you haven't already, I've not even looked at them yet. We will be moderating questions during your session, so your contribution may not appear immediately. But I can see them all on my side. Do not worry. I can see everything over here to be able to do this. So let's now go to the Q&A section and see some of the questions that have come in. What I like to do is kind of step through a number of these. There's different questions you're asking, and these can be about certifications. They can be about IT. They can be about technology. They can be about getting a job. They can be about anything that you would like to talk about. It doesn't have to be related to those things, but I do have my list here, and we'll start going through all of these to be able to work through them. So I think we'll start with one, and it's probably a question that was asked before I talked about this, but I think it's worth kind of mentioning again. This is from Kyle, who says, I've scheduled my A+ Core 1 for next week. Oh, it's coming. It's very close now. Any suggestions for last minute preparations? Been doing most pop quizzes, practice exams, study guides, and your study books. Appreciate all the help, Professor Messer. So let's talk about what we would do, I think, really in the last week. So let's say it's the last week of our studies, and we're working through and trying to determine where can we really focus our efforts to get the biggest bang for our time. And I'm going to tell you, we need to go back to the exam objectives. This makes a fantastic way to summarize everything and use it as a checklist. So I'm going to go to the very first section, which is domain 1, mobile devices. Domain 1.1, that subdomain, is given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components. And the options here are things like hardware/device replacement of battery, keyboard keys, random access memory, hard disk drive, solid state drive replacement, or hard drive replacement, wireless cards, the physical privacy and security components such as biometrics, and near-field scanner features. So that is the first subdomain of topics that we need to know. And if you can explain either to yourself or to a third party what each one of these processes would look like, then you can check each one of those bullets off of your list. What is the process for installing and configuring a battery in a laptop? What about the keyboard? What about memory? What about an SSD? You get the idea. And of course, you'll notice all of our videos follow this same format. So in our videos, you just go to section 1.1, and all of the topics that are in section 1.1 are dealt with and talked about in our 1.1 section of our video course. Sometimes that involves more than one video, but they're all there to be able to work through. Second section, compare and contrast the display components. There's a bunch of bullets there. Section 1.3, etc. So we simply go through the entire set of exam objectives. We go through every bullet. And if we know every bullet, we can check those off the list, draw a line through it, do whatever you'd like. It's a PDF, so you can annotate it. You may even notice on mine, do I have any annotation on here? It doesn't like this version. I do. Probably got a newer version. But I usually go through this list, and if I know something, I'll mark it in green and say, yep, I know that one. That one's green. If I don't know it really, really well, maybe I mark it as yellow. And then if it's something where I don't even know what they're talking about, we'll mark it as a bright color to kind of show up there. So now we're kind of keeping track of this. And now I can easily scan my exam objectives and go, let's look at all of the red stuff right now, because I know nothing about what is in the red. And then we can go to the yellows, and then of course we can ignore the greens because we feel like we know the green topics very, very well. I think that's one of the best things you can do for really in your last week, knowing what topics are the weakest. Where should I really look at different topics? Where should I focus my efforts? That's my recommendation. Now, there's lots of other things you can do. Maybe at the same time, you're going through my practice exams. Maybe you're using the course notes to gather more details about these topics that are in the exam objectives, because my course notes have the same format as the exam objectives. All the numbering in all of my videos and all of the numbering in all of my course notes are the same as the numbers in the exam objectives. Now you see the reasoning behind this madness that I've created. It's so you can find information as quickly as possible. So hopefully that can give you some things that you could do in that last week. Best of luck with your exam. You're going to do fine. You're going to ace that one. You're on to the next, working through your Core 2 after that. So best of luck. And as always, feel free to visit the Discord if you're trying to get those last topics down and you're wondering, what is the difference between this and this? There's a lot of people in there that can help you over at professormesser.com/Discord. So here is one that is more of an international question. I like this question from Nico, who asks, "Hey, Professor, I'm from Germany, and here it isn't really common for companies to ask for certifications, but I want to take my Core 1 exam this or next week. Do you think it's a waste of time if no one asks for it here, or if it's still nice to have? Thank you in advance." Well, this is where we get into the topics of understanding why we're doing this to begin with. What is the reason that we sat down and started going through our A+ materials? There's got to be a reason, right? There's got to be something that is driving us to get these certifications. They are definitely a challenging set of certifications to earn. It's not something you just decide on a whim. There has to be some purpose to going through this process for you. And indeed, as I mentioned before, these certifications and the importance of these certifications from a manufacturer's or a hiring manager's perspective, those requirements may vary depending on where you are in the world, in what state you live in, or in what country you live in. And in your case, Nico says, Nico's in Germany, and he's wondered, it's not really that stressed in Germany. Maybe you look through job postings in Germany, and hardly anybody is asking for certifications. This is not uncommon in certain geographies. That's just the way it works. In the United States, we're very focused on certifications, and in Germany, perhaps you're not, which is fine too. But there's more behind the scenes. It may be that a lot of us here in the U.S. are working towards our A+ because a lot of employers would like us to have our A+, and we would like to get a job with those employers, so we're going to go get the set of credentials that they would like to see. But beyond that, let's kind of take a step back from that, because one of the things Nico asks is, do you think it's a waste of time if nobody's asking for the A+? Well, it certainly isn't. As much as other people on the internet will work very hard to try to tell you otherwise, the content you're learning in the A+ can be applied to anybody's computer, whether they're looking for the certification or not. So understanding how to troubleshoot a process of booting up, understanding how to deal with this hardware, understanding the best practices for networking on a system. What about the Windows operating system? What about an understanding of Linux? What about the details of what you would choose inside of Mac OS? How about troubleshooting the startup process and maybe the shutdown process for those operating systems? How do you add new software to it? Well, what are the security concerns associated with those? All of those topics are covered in the A+. So it could be that if you're starting from ground zero in IT, and even though an employer may not be asking for the material, for the information that's in the certification, you're still learning it. So the topics, and this is sort of the thing that we often gloss over here in the US, these things you're learning now in this certification, and indeed the things you learn throughout your career in every certification, you will continue to use throughout your career. Having an understanding of the Windows operating system is valuable information that you will use certainly for the remainder of your career. Having a knowledge of Linux, understanding Mac OS, knowing what the troubleshooting process is, knowing what the very common issues are associated with networking and hardware and operating systems. Those are skills that you will now have, that even if an employer is not specifically asking for the cert, certainly they're asking you to be knowledgeable in troubleshooting. Certainly they're asking you to be knowledgeable in the Windows operating system, or configuring hardware, or understanding how to deal with these networking or security concerns. All of that is covered in A+. So even if you are in a geography where it's not a topic that is generally brought up by a hiring manager, it's usually not posted in a job posting, you're still learning valuable information, and that valuable information will be yours to use for the remainder of your career. Certainly not a waste of time in my mind. Let's do some more questions. Let's take it now to the next step. And this question talks about kind of that next step. This may even apply to many of you. I just got my A+ certificate. I would like to know more about the renewal process. As I mentioned earlier on in the study group, I said that when you earn your certification, it's good for 3 years. All right, what happens after 3 years? What do you do then? Some people will just assume, well, you just take the exams again. Well, that's a lot of work if you've already taken the exams before. in 3 years, you have to take both exams again. That seems a little bit involved. And you could certainly upgrade or earn another 3 years of your certification by taking the exams again. But there's other ways to upgrade as well. There's a big list on the CompTIA website. You could take a higher level CompTIA exam, and what constitutes higher level is documented on the CompTIA website. You could take a third-party certification exam, Amazon, Cisco, Microsoft, etc. Many different manufacturers you could take to help renew your A+ certification. CompTIA also produces their own renewal process called CertMaster CE. The CE stands for Continuing Education. So CertMaster CE is an online question and answer process, a little bit of training and a little bit of Q&A, a little bit of training and a little bit of Q&A. And you have to take these Q&A tests in this computer-based training module and get all of them correct to be able to renew your certification. So CompTIA states that you could probably renew your cert in 3 to 6 hours using this method. It is by far probably the easiest way to renew your certification if you're not already taking a third-party cert. But it's something that I've had people come to my website and they say, my certification expires tomorrow. Tomorrow, my certification that I've had for 3 years will no longer be valid. And by the way, once your certification expires, that's it. You can't get it back. You have to take the exams again if it suddenly expires after 3 years. So he says, I've got a day. What do I do? Well, you can't collect enough CEUs in a day. You're probably not going to be able to study for a higher level CompTIA exam in a day. You're probably not going to be able to study for a third-party certification exam in a day, but you could complete the CertMaster CE in a day. So this individual went out to the CompTIA website, purchased that. It is slightly more expensive than paying the annual fees for CEUs, but not much more, like $50 more. And when you only have a day left, that's pretty cheap. That's pretty inexpensive. So he purchased it, ran through it, submitted it that night, and his certification was renewed for another 3 years. CertMaster CE is what you're looking for if that's something you'd like to do. And it's a very, very good way to really understand what you need to, or at least get your certification renewed as quickly as possible. It's the way I would probably use to be able to do that. If you're submitting CEUs, continuing education units, there is an annual maintenance fee you have to pay. So there is money that you have to pay to be able to renew your certification. It's very minor. It's not incredibly expensive to pay that annual fee, but it's one where you do have to keep that in mind if you're submitting CEUs. If you're taking a CompTIA exam, a higher level exam to renew, you don't have to pay maintenance fees. If you're taking a third-party exam to renew, you do have to pay maintenance fees. So there are differences depending on the method you use. Make sure you read through the documentation on the CompTIA website. They'll explain to you everything you need to know about getting these done. It is really an exceptional way to renew. It's an easy way to renew. And if you're not using one of those other methods, CertMaster CE is just a simple way to make that happen. Let's do some more questions. I've got more on this list. Next on here. So let's talk about this one. That really does not apply to the things we're doing here. So since we're talking about renewals, this is a good one to talk about. This on our list from Michael asks, I passed my Core 1 exam 3 weeks ago. Congratulations. Using mainly your videos and past live streams. When should I try gathering CEUs for the A+? I haven't passed the Core 2 exam yet. So as I mentioned in that first hour, that I will send you an email certifying that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. CEUs have different categories, and a webinar category CEU is the style that we are doing here. That's what CompTIA calls it, is a webinar category CEU. If you don't currently earn or you don't currently have an A+ certification, you're not able to collect CEUs for that A+ certification because you don't have it yet. So you could certainly send me an email. You go through the process of submitting your request. I can send you that CEU request, but since you are not A+ certified, you can't do anything with it. Just a waste of time. CompTIA won't accept it. Only after you've earned your A+ certification, now that you've passed your Core 1, let's say tomorrow you go out and take your Core 2, you pass your Core 2 tomorrow. Now you're A+ certified. So then anything you do after that point will and can be used for continuing education unit credit. You can't collect CEUs until you are certified. And unfortunately, only passing one of the exams doesn't make you certified yet. So that's why it's an important thing to remember that you don't want to be in that position where you're submitting CEUs and thinking you have those CEUs, but in fact, CompTIA is not going to accept them because you're not A+ certified when you earned them. Also let you know that there are only webinar category CEUs. You can only collect 4 of them out of the 20 CEUs that you need in a 3-year period. So as much as I would love it for you to be able to watch through 20 of my live streams and earn 20 CEUs, they've already thought of that. They already know that we were going to do that. And they've decided, nope, you can't do that. You have to do a lot of different things. That's why it can be more complicated or more involved to earn CEUs rather than simply taking the CertMaster CE. So hopefully that gives you some perspective on using those CEUs. Other topics, let's keep going through other ones that finally, the hard questions from Anonymous, who asks, what are the secrets to your beard? What are the secrets to this? It is magnificent, isn't it? It is just fantastic. This is the question I get all the time. Is how is it this luscious? How is it that amazing to view? And in fact, you're seeing it over the internet. Imagine if you were in person. Just think of that. How great. It's not, it's just a beard. Let's not overreact, shall we? That's not the way we work through that. And working through all of these. So that is, and a good question, but absolutely I will bring that up to Mrs. Professor Messer. It's really, that's who crafts this whole thing. That's who keeps everything going with these, is the best of this. So hopefully that's filled you in on the details of the magnificence, which is the beard. And not something from the exam objectives either. It's just that's just the way it is. It's just this beautiful and gorgeous naturally. Maybe more of a serious question now. The last one? Wait, before I do that one, this has to be from the same person, which is, how'd you get your goatee so perfect? Do you see where we're going with this? We're degrading very rapidly. How about a better question, a more serious question? And this one is, how'd you get into IT? All right. Well, I've mentioned this one before, but I think maybe this is a good 5-minute overview. We'll give you a breakdown as to how all of this craziness happened. When I was relatively young, this would be in high school. So this was just a few years ago. When I was in high school, we were in the industry, the personal computing industry was in its infancy. And because I'm old, that's how it works. And when we were just starting to get computers at our schools, and those computers fascinated me. And really throughout everything since I was very young, anything mechanical or how does it work, or really just the process of solving problems was something that just fascinated me. I love to do that. And when I saw this computer, it looked to me like a big problem. Like, there's a lot going on here. How can I learn more about how this device works? And how can I solve problems with this device? This device isn't working properly. How can we fix it? What's involved in something like that? I was just completely blown away about the technology. Now, certainly could have ended there. And in fact, with many of us, it does. You know, we have an interest in video games. We have a video game console. We have an interest in laptops. We get a laptop. We have an interest in computers. Maybe we build one ourselves. But I didn't have a lot of money. I was just a high school student with very bad jobs, working. I was literally working in the fields. And when they finally opened a video rental store in my town, I worked in the video rental store. I did furniture repair and refinishing. I just had a lot of physical jobs when I was younger. And it made me understand then that I really did not like physical jobs. It made me understand very quickly, physical jobs are hard. They're tough jobs. That's one of the reasons we pay people so much who do physical jobs, because we don't want to do them. So I realized early on, I want a job where there's a lot of, air conditioning. How can I get a job with a lot of air conditioning? But more importantly, how can I understand more about this technology, which just fascinated me. When I was in college, although I was getting a business degree, I got a part-time job working at the college's computing center. And at the time, that consisted of mainframes and supercomputers that were cooled with liquid nitrogen. It was a lot of fun. It was just an amazing amount of technology in this very small place. And I got to learn a lot about organizations and technology and how they're implemented and the processes and the procedures and all of those types of things. When I got out of college, although I had a degree in business management, I really wanted something to do that had an aspect of technology to it. And I ended up getting a job in South Miami with it was sort of a computer store. It was a computer store in South Miami. But this computer store was part of a larger organization, a larger company, and they had the contract they were the exclusive provider of computers to all of Dade County, Florida, which is one of the largest counties in Florida. That's where Miami is. That's in Dade County. So Miami, it's a big place. So all of the computers for the the county of Dade County, and indeed this also applied a little bit to the city of Miami, we were their exclusive provider. And so I was the field service tech for all of those. I was in some cases, one of two field service technicians for this. A lot of the times I was the only field service tech. And so I would hop in my car in the morning, I would drive to a customer's site, and I would either fix the problem they were having. I'd do a warranty replacement of their hard drive. I'd swap out memory. I'd install new memory. I'd install a new hard drive. I'd do the normal things that a field service technician would commonly do. So then I'd get back in my car and I'd drive somewhere else in the Tri-County area, and I'd work on those computers. And then at the end of the day, drive back to the office, sort of dump all of the stuff off that was warranty repairs, and then the next day we'd repeat the same thing. So after doing that for about 9 months, driving around Miami every day for 9 months, I was still a little bit sane. And I talked to some organizations, some companies in the area for getting on their corporate help desk. And I ended up getting on one of those corporate help desks and moved into more of a professional role in a building where I stayed in one place all day, which to me was just phenomenal. I stayed at that job for 5 years because I loved just being in one place and working with some very nice technology. This was a large multi-billion insurance company, and we had lots of technology. So I was learning. I was like a sponge. Everything that was there, I worked mostly on the computers, on the desktop systems and laptops. But then there was this network, and it fascinated me that there's something on that wire. What's happening on that wire that allows all of these devices to communicate? Now, remember at this time, as I mentioned, it was a number of years ago. So the internet was not something that was available to me. So it was really at that job where I first connected to the internet. And it was really near the end of that position where I did that. So having training materials available was difficult. You had to grab all the manuals from a manufacturer or call a manufacturer on the phone with your voice and say, "Hi, could you send me anything that helps me understand what in the world I'm looking at here?" And they go, "Oh yeah, we got some materials we can send you." And they send it to you in the mail. Here are the books that arrived in the mail. Now you talk about it as if it was something that was archaic and why would anybody do this? But it was a great way to learn because now I can just read through everything that was here. And it was written from the perspective of, you don't have an internet. This information isn't anywhere else. This is the only place you can get this information. It better be good and better be detailed. That was the time when you would go to the manual and it could actually help you, was during that time frame. The internet in many ways has corrupted manuals to make them less workable, less usable, because you've got the internet. They kind of use the internet as a crutch in many ways, I think. But that was great because now I learned about analyzers, network analyzers, being able to capture traffic, understand what a frame is on a network, understand what TCP/IP does, understand how the IP addresses and the IP header works. What is TCP? What is UDP? This was information we were learning years ago. It was a number of years ago. And the core content of what I was learning during that time are topics and information that I still use to this day. That's why I mentioned to you earlier that if you go out and get the certification and you learn about Windows and you learn about hardware and you learn about networking, you learn about security, you will use this content for the rest of your career, because that's how it worked for me as well. I learned all about this networking piece and how to read these packet traces and how to understand what the applications were doing. And then that's how it worked. We were able to understand what was going on in the network and find problems and fix them. And when people say it's the network, we could take a packet capture and say, actually, it's your application. And here's where the application is broke right there, right here on my hand. It's where the application is broken. If you fix that right here, it would solve the problem. I can't tell you how many times we would show that to a developer and they go, oh, we'll just make a database index. So the problem that we were struggling with for a month, we were only able to really see what was going on by taking the packet capture, showing it to the developer, and the developer going, oh yeah, I can fix that in 30 seconds. And then they fix it and we were up and running again. That was the part to me that was fascinating. The problem solving, having a problem and finding a solution to the problem is one of those things that really in my brain just lights a fire. There's a you can almost hear it. There's almost an audible sound, a bell that rings, or just something that happens where we've solved the problem. Boom, instant, right there. You're getting just a little shot of a, yes, you did it. Yes, we figured out the problem. Yes, we know what the issue is. A lot of fun to have that position. From there, I used the knowledge that I had communicated through the years to move into a value-added reseller, a VAR position, which is where we were a middleman, if you will, between the manufacturer and the end user, because many manufacturers do not sell direct to the end user. They only sell through a value-added reseller, or these days we just call them resellers. The reseller that I went with, I stayed there for a little bit of time, and then I moved into a position with the manufacturer directly. And I worked as a systems engineer for the rest of my career, working across many different manufacturers, dealing with network analysis, network management, network troubleshooting, and IT security. Spent the last 7 years of my career working for someone else, working with a next generation firewall company. So that's where I really got into IT, was that process. And I think if anybody is interested in technology, you're interested in knowing more about how things work, you're interested in fixing problems, IT is just this amazing career where you can start doing one thing, see something sparkly and interesting over here that kind of directs your efforts, and now you're moving into a different part of IT, and you can do that for a little while. So it never gets boring. It's never the same thing. You're always solving problems. It's really a remarkable area to be in. Probably better, I would say definitely better than any other segment you can find yourself. You can't do that with transportation. You can't do that with medicine. I guess you can't do it very easily with transportation or medicine or manufacturing or financial services or any of those. You know, imagine if you're a doctor, you go to school for years, and you're going to be a guy who works on hands. You're the hand doctor. You solve problems with hands. You know everything there is to know about the fingers and everything that's inside. You can fix anything dealing with a hand. But what if you wake up one morning and go, sure, I'm tired of hands. Let's do something different. Well, you can't. You have to go back to school. You want to do feet now. You got to go back to school. You got to go to podiatry school to be a podiatrist. You can't just switch one day. But in IT, you can start on the desktop computing side, move into cloud computing, do things with networking, work on designing of systems. You can do security. You might want to work with databases. You may want to have an emphasis in data centers. You got a lot of options and things that you can do. Very, very, very common to do that. So that's what I would recommend. If you're interested in IT, start learning all of these technologies at the bottom. The A+ is the great place to start. That's why one of the very first course we created was the A+. And that's why, because we needed some way to get in the door. I wanted people to have an opportunity to learn everything they need to learn to get that first job or get a better job. And I think the A+ is a good place to start. And then we can build on that with things like the Network Plus and Security Plus. There is a reason to this madness that I put together, and that is the reasoning that I put behind those when I worked on them. So hopefully that gives you some perspective. That was my path. That was the one I did. Your path is going to be very different, most certainly. But you get to decide what that looks like. You just have to put together the way to get there. And there's lots of ways to get there. Nobody has to follow this. It's not on a rail. You can meander around this IT. I certainly did. I did desktop management, server management, networking, security. I went all over the place. So you can do that too. Find the way that makes sense for you. You can make that happen. Folks in the chat room are asking, well, how can we contact Professor Messer? The best way is from my website. Go to professormesser.com. At the top of the screen is a link for Contact Us. Really should say Contact Me, because everything there just comes directly to me. So anything you put at Contact Us will come directly to me. It's got a priority. It goes into my inbox. It never goes to spam. I always see those. So that's one of the best ways to contact me if you have a question primarily about the website or the videos or the things that are there. If it's a broader question, such as, how do I get into IT? Well, asking here would probably be the best place to do that, because we can really talk it through and we can get feedback on that and make those happen. Other questions. Let's keep going through this list. This is an interesting one. I think some of you may even run into this from time to time. So this is one where, should I include a computer technician job on my resume that only lasted a few months? Can it get my foot in the door for another IT job? I think any experience you have is valuable experience, assuming, of course, that this was designed to be a short-term job that you're talking about. Now, if you went to a job and you started working there and you lasted a few months, and then one day you show up and you're late and you smell of alcohol and they fire you, maybe that's not the best way to approach this. Maybe that's something you should not consider talking about. But if this was just a short-term contract job, they hired you to do this task, you were there for 3 months, you implemented this new facility, you built out the servers and the systems, and you ran the cables, and you installed all the laptop computers, and that's a perfect thing to go on your resume. Why wouldn't you put that experience down? Because there's a few things that happen there. As a hiring manager, and I have been a hiring manager in these roles, a number of these roles, I want to know if people have done this before. I want to know if they have an experience of the technologies. I think back to the job that I got with the next generation firewall. So I was one of the first systems engineers hired at Palo Alto Networks. This was a number of years ago. So I was employee number 95. This is a company now that has, I think, 11,000 employees or something. They're enormous now. So before we were public, they hired a group of us, just a core group of SEs. There were 5 or 6 of us. And we were the technical folks who were supposed to know everything there is to know technically about these products to be able to implement them, design and implement them into a customer's network. This is a relatively big ask. Imagine a firewall technology that no one has seen yet. So they expect you to have some knowledge of firewalls, but enough that you could understand the market, you can understand what the challenges were with firewalls, and that you can understand how to implement them, how to design them and put them into a network. And fortunately, I had all of those check marks. I'd worked with Network Associates, which at the time was a conglomeration of Network General and McAfee. And we had firewalls, intrusion prevention, antivirus, network analysis, network management, reporting. The list goes on and on. We had PGP encryption there. So every box there was checked. And I could walk into a room with these people and say, I know nothing of your product because obviously your product is brand new and nobody's seen next generation firewalls before. In fact, it was very difficult convincing anyone that next generation firewalls were a thing and that they worked. We had to be that a way to kind of train people on this new technology, but we also had to understand what was going on under the surface and apply that back to other technologies. So having a background of existing firewalls, of encryption, of networking, all of these work together in my favor. And even after that, they did not want to hire me. They really did not. And I had people that were in my corner who were being hired there, who went to bat and fought for me and got me that job. And I think I was on kind of a trial basis. They didn't tell me that, but I kind of felt that when I got there. But it was after the first training that I did with them, that I did with my manager, who was the worldwide manager of systems engineers. He sat me down and goes, here's what we're doing. And I got there and like, oh, this is interesting. Let's see this. Can we type this? What happens when we do that? How will we plug this in? I had a lot of questions. And so immediately he saw, okay, he gets it. He groks the technology pretty good. We're going to go with that. So they kept me there, thankfully. They allowed me to remain within their company for a number of years. I think I stayed there 8 years, almost 9 years at Palo Alto Networks. It was a blast. It was a great job. We had so much fun with a technology that was brand new. It helps when nobody else in the market had your technology. You could just walk into a room and every other firewall was worthless next to a Palo Alto Networks firewall. In many ways, it still is. And it was great to walk in with those, to be able to show, here is an amazing security technology and here are all the things that it does. And one of the greatest things that happen in those meetings where people go, no, it doesn't. Nothing does the things you're talking about. You're another one of those corporate talking heads with the yakety yak, 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 telling me things that it does when it has no way to do that. Wait, it did that? Hold on a second. Show me that screen again. It actually does that. All the things you just said, it does that. It was an amazing technology. It was shocking in the way that it worked. And so that was a really fun way to work with this technology. And then we got to design it, implement it on customers' networks, talk to them about things they wanted to solve. You plug it in. This is one of the best meetings we've ever had with this is, in fact, this happened many times, is we would go into a customer in the morning and we'd say, we've got this new technology. You've never seen anything like it before. If you have a port mirror or span port where we could just get a copy of your traffic, we can plug it in now. It has no effect on your corporate network, but we can go to lunch, and when we come back, we can see what it found. And every time, really, we didn't need lunch. You need about 10 minutes with this thing being plugged in. And we come back after lunch and show all of the people on the network that were using encryption, that were using open VPNs, that were circumventing existing security policies, that were visiting websites they should not be visiting, that were visiting websites that they should never be visiting, regardless of whether they were at work or at home. The things we saw, the lists of things that we saw of people doing, we got a lot of people fired by plugging in this piece of equipment. I didn't get them fired. They got themselves fired, but the piece of equipment, the next generation firewall, is the thing that really got them fired. Because we had documentation. We saw it happening in real time, and we're able to show it on the screen. This is what they're doing and how it's going through and how it's affecting everything else on the network. And very often, and we've had people go to prison after taking this technology in. And that went for a very long time because the things they were doing on the network were illegal. That's an exciting job. Regardless of where in the world of IT, that's an exciting job. That's a lot of fun and things to do. So if you've already worked a job as a technician, you've already been through this process of understanding, being hired, working for a company, waking up in the morning, getting there on time, working hard, understanding the underlying technology, and then pushing yourself to learn more, you need to tell other people you've done that. And in fact, you've probably got great stories of what you did in that job. So when you have this next job opening that comes up and they invite you in for an interview, And they say, I see her on the interview, because they never read your interview before you, never read your resume before you walk in the room. You ever notice that? Nobody ever prepares. So you're there. It's the most important thing in the world to you. They've not even looked through your stuff. It's almost insulting, but this is the process. And they're gonna immediately pull up your resume, and they're gonna ask you the first thing they see on it, or at least the first job that's there. Oh, I see here that you had a job for 3 months doing this. Tell me about that. And that's where you get to tell them, oh, what a great job this was. Here's what we did. Here's the problem that the customer had. Here is why they hired us. Here's what we went in and did. Here are all of the things that I learned. And I think it positions me well, very well, for the things that you were asking about in this job, because I noticed in your job posting, you asked for this, 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 and this. And I did this, 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 and this on this job for 3 months. It seemed like a perfect fit to me. What do you think? There you go. There's your interview. I think we're done now, right? So absolutely tell them you were in that job for 3 months. It's one of those where if you were thrown out of the job, it's a little bit different. But if it was a contract job, it was supposed to be 3 months long, and now you're looking for the next opportunity, of course you should bring that up, and it will be a very valuable thing to bring up in the interview so that you can talk about those as well. So let's do some more questions. I've got some more here. How's our time? Our time is not good. So we're almost at the top of the hour again. Let me keep going through questions. I'm talking too much. We talked about yak, yak, yak. That was me. Other questions. I'm reading through these so that I know what we're going to do as we step through this. Okay. We have some questions here. This is actually a pretty good one. I deal with this constantly in technology. Saram says, I have more interest in hardware than in the software aspect of IT. What IT field do you think I should explore? This is a good one. So let's see if we can break this down a little bit and see where this is. As many of you know, I put the different areas of technology into two very big categories. So if there's a Venn diagram of two big circles, in this Venn diagram, the two circles barely overlap with each other. So there's a little sliver of overlap in the middle. One of those circles is computer science. Computer science, generally, very broadly, concentrates on software development, hardware development, and the integration of software and hardware and how they operate. So if you're someone who is building our next generation of switches, you're building the next generation of routers or firewalls, or you're building software to integrate with the hardware, or you're simply building applications for a mobile phone, for a browser-based front end, you're writing applications from these programming languages, that is computer science. I put that in the category of computer science. The area of information technology is the other circle. Information technology revolves around the equipment that we use, the hardware of desktop computers, laptops, tablets, mobile phones, how to manage these devices, how to secure these devices, how to secure your company's data, how to maintain and upgrade the applications that are on the network, how to secure and connect all of those different systems together, how to encrypt all of the data going over your network, and to ensure that all of those systems are working and functional 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. That's IT. So those two different areas rarely, if ever, connect to each other. So if you work in IT, you're not going to be writing applications. You're not going to be building the next generation switch. You're not going to be integrating software or creating firmware for those switches or routers. That's on the computer science side. You're not going to be writing applications. You're not going to be building a mobile app. You're not going to be writing an application that's going to go in someone's browser. That's on the computer science side. But the little overlap that I mentioned there is really with automation and scripting. And if you are someone who is on the IT side and you want to build out a cloud-based infrastructure, you want to automate the process of building out certain networking components or security devices or application instances, you would do that through a series of scripting and that scripting generally focuses on infrastructure as code. I don't like that term so much because it's not really code as much as it is as an infrastructure in a description that we write down in a file is really what that is. Code is such a broad term, but it's a way to describe the building of all of these building blocks of these systems and have them all work together. And we just do that instead of taking it out of a box and putting in a rack and plugging in cables. You write down in this document, we need this type of switch. It needs to go here. We need to connect it to these systems. Do it in the software. That's the beauty of the cloud-based infrastructure, of course. So when you say that you have more interest in hardware than in software, and for IT, that's pretty good because you can do a lot with hardware. Maybe you're someone who likes to break fix hardware. Maybe your job is as a field service technician. That's what I did for so long, where I would go from customer to customer, effectively solving hardware problems. They need more memory. I need to install more memory in the system. The hard drive has failed. We need to swap out the hard drive. Somebody wants to upgrade to an SSD. Let's get an SSD installed. The printer connection is not working. We need to replace the cable. These are hardware type problems, or we need to fix the printer. Another big issue. So those are hardware type issues. Those are solely and squarely in the field of IT. And if you're someone who is focusing on information technology, you're probably going to be doing more with networking, security, operating systems, firmware. You're going to be working on keeping those systems up and running, on designing where they would go on the network, where they are plugged in, how you would implement those, how they talk to each other, how you maintain them, how you upgrade them, how you secure them. That's IT. So it sounds to me that if you've got an interest in hardware and you're interested in IT, you're in the right place. That's exactly what you should be doing. So well played, I guess. Nothing else we have to do there to make that work in the way we would expect. Okay, other questions. Let's keep going through this list. This is a pretty good one. This kind of applies to all exams, not just mine, but Henry asks, I am starting out on learning Security Plus. I began watching your Security Plus videos. Is this all I need, or should I do something else before taking the exams? This is probably one of the most popular questions I get, most common questions that we will get. And there are frequently asked questions that is in the mix. The thing that I think a lot of people want to know is everything in your Security Plus course? Have I covered all of the topics that are covered in the CompTIA exam objectives? And we have. I specifically write my video courses with the exam objectives right there, and I'm checking off every objective as I go through the video, just to make sure I cover every topic from the exam objectives. So functionally, my video course is a complete and comprehensive course that covers all of the objectives you need to know to pass your Security Plus exam. But that doesn't answer your question. The question is, do I need to do something else before taking the exams? And the one thing that I can stress when you're talking about these exams is there's no easy button. There's no simple way to just watch the videos and now I'm ready. I can take my exam and pass it. And in some cases you can. There are many people that do that. But it is not your highest percentage for success. The highest percentage for success is to study from many different sources in many different ways. And ideally, there would be 4 sources I would recommend. One is the video course. My video course is free. It's available, covers every topic from the objectives, does a good job at giving you that overview, and it tells you everything you need to know to pass the exam. But it tells you in a way that is that video. But if you've noticed, if you read a book, we'll put that on second on our list, you get a good book on Security Plus. The book goes into a lot of more detail because books can. Books and text is presented to us in a way that is very different than the way that video is presented to us. And we learn different ways from different things in different formats. So the video teaches us in one way, the book teaches us in a different way. And very often getting that from 2 different sources in different ways is enough to really bring those topics home and make you really understand what's being asked for you about that for you. The other one is I like to see people that are going through labs. They are taking the things they learned in the book, taking the things they watch in the video and now they're doing them. A lot of videos or a lot of labs are not well written. You don't understand why you're going through the process. It says, type this on the screen. All right, I'll type that. Okay. That was it. I don't know what I just did. It said type it, and I typed it, and that's on the screen, and I typed it. But it doesn't tell me why I typed it. A good lab is going to say, here's the process we're going to do. If you type this, we would expect to see this. And when you type that, here's what's going on behind the scenes. Ideally, you would have a lab like that is really going to focus on those. The CertMaster labs are very good at doing that. I really do like the CertMaster labs. Probably one of the strongest parts of the CertMaster series of products are their labs, in my opinion. The other thing I would recommend is good practice exams. Before walking into an exam, it would be good to test yourself. We've seen some of those practice exam questions today, but I think those are important. Now, do you have to have all 4 of those things to pass your exam? Not necessarily. Would it really give you the best possible percentage for success? Probably. But if you've already been in the industry for a while, or I've spoken with a lot of people that say, I have a problem reading. I've dyslexia is an issue, or I have some type of problem just being interested in the reading process. I tell them, well, then don't read the book. Go watch my videos, then go watch some other videos. Go find other video sources if that's something that really fits you best. Find the way of learning that is good for you, not the way of learning that's good for someone else. So be able to focus on those, and I think that's the important part. And I think that ultimately, most people probably use a subset of these. Very few people, I think, do all 4 of those. I think most people do exams that, or do a series of materials that are a combination, but maybe not all 4 of them. Maybe 2 out of the 4 or 3 out of the 4 is probably most common, I think. That's where I would focus your efforts on the 3 or 4 of those. Let's go through some more. And I have time for probably one more because we're at the top of the hour. Let's go through one more and what might be here. This one is more of a question on the exam itself. And this is an important thing to consider. I think a lot of people don't even know this. Steph asks, how many performance-based questions are typically on the test? CompTIA doesn't tell us walking into this. And in fact, if you had no idea about these exams and you sit down, you go into the testing center and you sit down and you go through the first 3 questions, and they are all these relatively involved drag and drop, matching, fill in the blank, or command line. They're not multiple choice based questions. And I've had a lot of people come to me after an exam experience that didn't go well, and they said, it hit me with these crazy questions at the beginning. I had no idea. And we just had one after another, after another, after another. I thought the whole exam was going to be these very big, complex questions. And those are the performance-based questions. Now, of course, they realized after the 5th one or 6th one that suddenly everything else was multiple choice. Unfortunately, they spent so much time on the performance-based questions, they weren't able to get through the multiple choice. And in some cases, they ended up getting a failing score. And so they weren't prepared. They didn't walk into the exam knowing what they were going to be hit with. And so I tell people all the time, you need to know what the structure is, and you need to have a strategy for dealing with these performance-based questions. Some people like to go through them as quickly as possible and get to the multiple choice based. Some people like to read through the performance-based questions, but simply skip them. Go to the next one. Now go to the next one. Now go to the next one. Now go to the next one. So they know what the questions are going to be about. They have an idea of the technologies asked in these performance-based questions. They read through them, but then they really focus the very beginning of their exam on the multiple choice-based questions because those are more comfortable for people to know, something that people are accustomed to. The other thing, and this is an important consideration, I mentioned this in my Exam Hacks ebook, is going through the multiple choice-based questions can often jog your memory about technologies that are asked on the performance-based questions. So often skipping performance-based allows you to know more and remember more about these topics, that when you finally circle back to the performance-based questions, because you're watching the clock, There's a clock in the upper right on the screen. It will tell you all the time how much time you have left. So you can circle back with 10 to 15 minutes left and make sure that you cover everything that's in those performance-based questions. So that is why I think that's an important consideration. You're probably going to get, I usually describe it as a handful of performance-based questions. People have said, I got 5, I got 3, I got 6, I got 7. I had someone have 7 performance-based questions. It depends on the exam and what questions are there. Every exam is different. It's a different randomization of questions that are there. I think CompTIA is probably allocated a certain amount of time, so they make sure you have enough time to do all of these questions. So I think that's one where you need to be prepared for performance-based. You need to know that there are a certain number of them, and you need to manage your time properly. I think that's one of the biggest problems people run into. Interestingly enough, the performance-based questions themselves should not be that difficult for you. They're simply asking questions of you that come from the exam objectives. As long as you know the material in the exam objectives, you're going to do fine. You're not going to have a problem. So that's what I tell people is focus on that. I think that's going to be your most important part of this, is really understanding what is going to be important about taking this exam and understanding what's there. Know that those performance-based questions are at the beginning. I think that's going to be a critical part of it. Don't be surprised when you get in the exam. Can you imagine walking into the exam and suddenly the performance-based questions are the thing that we now have to kind of think about and worry about? I would not want to be in that position. So I can understand why people would be concerned in working through those. Okay. Other things that, I will say, by the way, because we are kind of at the top of the hour, which is a common stopping point on this, we had such a lot of great questions that were in here, many other questions that were in here, and being able to work through them. And we will circle back to some of these in the next study group, because we do have another study group that's coming up in 2 days. So if you are here live today on Tuesday, on Thursday, we have our Core 2 A+ study group. We'd love for you to come back to that one and be able to, we have all new questions in the first hour. And of course, we will have all new questions in the second hour that you can always submit at any time throughout the live stream. That would be a great time to come back, and we can learn everything we need to know about the Core 2. And it might be something else in there about operating systems and security and other types of topics that will be important for your Core 2 exam. Well, I think that brings us to the end, sadly, of another Core 1 study group. We always have such a great time doing these. If you enjoyed and got something out of this study group, we would love it if you gave this video a thumbs up. We'd love it even more if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Simply visit ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube or go to YouTube.com/ProfessorMesser. You can do it in reverse to get there. Either one will get you to our YouTube channel. We would love it if you could subscribe for us. That would be a great way. If you're currently planning on studying for Security Plus, you can see we've got a lot of new videos coming out this week, next week, the continuing weeks. There's a lot happening right now. So much fun, so many things to do. There's always an opportunity out there, and we want to make sure you make the best of it to get your job or get a better job by getting these certifications. Thanks for joining us in this study group. We look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Thanks for joining us. See you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody. If I could make that happen too. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.